Hey there, my name's Mark McCartney and welcome to the What is a Good Life podcast. If you're new to this podcast, over the last 3 years, I've interviewed over 200 people around this question, not to prescribe a universal answer, but to help you find and define your own answer to this question. And I'm doing that by sharing so many other people's lines of inquiries, curiosities, and explorations in the hopes that it helps prompt your own inquiry into answering this question for yourself. Well, I'm also trying to share with you what I perceive to be more genuine expressions of the human experience and indeed more meaningful conversations. All which brings us to this week and the 60th episode of the What is a Good Life podcast. And I'm delighted to introduce Matthew Zoltan as our guest. Matthew is a former monk, an author, and co-founder of Undo app, an app that helps you rediscover what makes us human through natural meditation. In this episode, Matthew takes us on his journey from being a monk for much of his 20s, before realizing his practice and methods weren't supporting him to fully engage with the felt experience of his body. That for him, certain ideologies led to disassociations from the body and its experience. He shares with us the importance of experiencing life sensorily, how one can perceive the fully felt experience of life. We also discuss the roles of our mental reactions in accentuating pain, as well as the problem with starting off from the belief that we are lacking and need to improve, suggesting that you already are the perfect expression of everything that you've been through. Ultimately, Matthew points to the significance of exploring our pain and resolving our hurt, describing pain as aspects of ourselves that we need to give attention to. If you're having trouble with accepting yourself, embracing yourself as you presently are, or engaging with your feelings, this episode will give you so much to consider. While Matthew may confront a lot of your beliefs, he is really highlighting the importance of connecting with our felt experience. Look, I found this episode to be extremely enlightening and enlivening. Matthew confronted a lot of my own beliefs in this conversation, whether from a spiritual or psychological or religious perspective. But I wouldn't get caught up in that because I think there's something really important that he's sharing in terms of both feeling our pain and embracing who we are. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this episode. And if you like this conversation, please like, share, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube and if you're on the podcasting platforms, please continue to leave your lovely reviews, as I greatly appreciate your support at this stage of my podcasting journey. So without further ado, the 60th episode of the What is a Good Life podcast. Matthew, thank you very much for joining me today on the What is a Good Life podcast. After watching you appear on a couple of other podcasts, I've been very much looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. And thank you really sincerely for having me on your podcast. I've really been looking forward to this.
Well, Matthew, as I tend to have the habit, I kick these conversations off with the question of, is there a question you're trying to answer as you move through life?
Yeah, I did get this in your text that you did have this answer, this question. And I found it very intriguing question, actually. And the answer that came to me immediately for me to this question, which is I, for a long time now, since I was in my mid-20s, there was this bit of a change that happened to me during that period. And I found that since that period, I haven't really found that life presents any questions at all. I've actually found that the opposite is true, that life is a constant flow of answers, but not necessarily the answers we want. So this constant flow of facts, of the feelings and the sensations that are part of making up us and our experience of life, and the constant flow of facts and information that comes to us from people in the world outside of us are themselves, to me, completely self-evident and quite clear in that sense at the point at which I first received those. So, and that's the same for everybody, actually. But most of us interpret what we receive through our preferences, through our thoughts about that, and then we reject certain facts, and we change the facts into fictions by all the ideas and belief systems and ideologies that we come up about life and about ourselves. Or this is what I think, rather than just accepting the facts and being able to live with the facts that life present to us on a daily level. So I'm more interested in not so much. Since then I haven't really had an ongoing question. I'm more open to the ongoing answers. And so I'm more, in that sense, find myself more interested in just what's coming in front of me today, and actually absolutely depend on that to be able to have a response. Like for my preparation, if you like, for the podcast, I just sit quietly, and I want to be quiet so that I can be receptive, because I really depend on what's coming at me to trigger what comes out of me, in the sense of what is going to be my response to this. I don't really know that in any point in life until life puts a demand on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I sort of worked this out pretty early in life, and it's meant that it hasn't been so confusing, and so many questions. It's more like what comes in front of me. I'm I'm keenly interested in being receptive to that, and I find in being receptive to it through my senses, and my own sensitivity, uh, that actually everything is quite simple. Yeah,
Yeah.
life is complex for sure when we start thinking about it, but if we tend to think about it because we're at odds with it. Yeah, we're in conflict with it. And if we don't like the way it is, we think a lot about it. If we can if we can be more receptive to the way it is, it starts to make a lot more sense at a different level than the mental level. It's more of a sensory. This makes sense. It's more holistic, if you like. It's more of an organic, rather than a mental interaction with life.
This is absolutely gorgeous. Can you tell me what was happening in your 20s, or what was even in your mid 20s? What was being cultivated, or what was occurring or shifting for that realization to occur?
Okay. Um, I was at the age, between the age of 18 and about 27. About 18 and 27. I was living as a yogi monk. Um, Not that necessarily is the most significant aspect of that. It's just that I had the opportunity to meditate a lot, and to get lost, absolutely lose myself in methodology and in ideologies, and which is pretty much my view of what the monastic life is. To take on ideas that are other people's ideas, to imbibe them in your own system and create confusion that isn't otherwise there. And then, if you're really, really lucky, which most aren't, unfortunately, is you stay confused, and you have varying degrees of confusion. Simply because during that period, I discovered that what I was taking on was actually ideologies and questions, because you said, what are the questions in life? I was being forced or being cultivated from this environment to ask questions that really one would never ask. Yeah.
Right.
And because they're ridiculous questions. For example, the first question that was suggested, or the first part of the ideology that was suggested to me at the green age of 18 or 19, was that you are not a body, you're a soul. Yeah. And then the meditation techniques to conjure this experience was introduced, and using those meditation techniques to conjure this experience backed up the ideology that was being presented. And so, because I was naive, which is fair enough, I was only young, I took this on, and I couldn't tell the difference between conjured experiences and the actual real life experiences that are already going on inside of myself as a living body, as an organism. And so I became, like most spiritual or religious people, I became disassociated from the body, disassociated from my sense of myself as a part of nature, and became more involved in the ideas of being something other than what I really am. And after a few years of intensely applying these concepts and these techniques to maintain, I suppose what you would call is a spiritual or out of the body sense of myself, which is entirely manufactured and imaginary. But it doesn't. But even if you imagine something, it has very real effects. You know,
Yeah.
if you imagine someone doesn't like you, you can become very disturbed by that. And then when you work out that's not true, then the disturbance disappears. It may
Yeah.
have been, yeah. So the disturbance may have been based in imagination, but imagination still creates very real experiences. And this is where I discovered as a spiritualist, this is where we become incredibly confused. It's very subtle to see that where the meditation technique that you're using conjures the desired experience that it's intended to conjure, but the experience itself feels very, very real, even though leading up to that experience, until you have that experience, you feel as though you're simply trying to achieve that. So you don't feel like you have anything at all. Yeah. But once that experience develops and develops more, and you repeat that technique or that approach or that idea in your thinking processes, so you build in yourself a whole new persona, a whole new sense of I.
Yeah.
Even and so you end up with a problem. So what happened in that time was eventually my body, about the age of 23, 24, had a huge reaction to this, fortunately. And I went through about a 2 or 3 year period where when I was at night time, I couldn't sleep because my body would go into different contortions and different reactions, which I, in hindsight, only understood. And that was, to make it really straightforward, there's nothing mystical about it. It's that we, as a human being, impose ideas on and strangle the natural functionings of this already perfect human organism.
Hmm.
And when we do that, we create mental and physical illness, and we create disassociation from the foundation of ourselves as and what we are. And this, I find, is the primary cause. The disassociation is the primary cause of really all of our problems. Yeah, our health problems and our relationship conflict problems. So we lose our sensitivity because of disassociation, and we get so caught up in the ideas. So my system went through a huge revolt against what I was imposing, and I was imposing it intensely. You know, I was meditating 10, 12 hours a day. I was constantly brainwashing myself with these concepts of spirituality and religion. And until I completely and utterly became a totally different person to anything that I was as a younger man or as a boy. Yeah. And then that dropped away. And once that dropped away, through this process of my body rejecting it, what I was left with was a real emptiness base of a mental level. But I found that my sensory function was incredibly high, incredibly attuned. I was very sensitive in my own body to myself and to the world around me, and I was very sensitive through the sense organs to be able to receive things and see the world as it is, and experience myself as I am before what normally we would do with ourselves, which is we would interpret those experiences through our thoughts about those. So I was more operating as, again, just as a sensory being. I was got right back to that basis of what's coming at me from life or from other people. I can receive that. And I wasn't, therefore, I found myself not in conflict with that, no matter what that was, just really more fascinated by that and intrigued by that. So I was, in that sense, I felt I was receiving life sensorily,
Yeah.
exactly as it is, without the interpretation of thoughts changing that, because I'd completely given up on ideologies, completely given up on belief systems at that point, and I've remained that way. Um, and and of course, my understanding of myself became very, very basic. So however I am from moment to moment that's the felt experience of me. If I don't interpret that, then I have far less conflict with that as well. So that was the change that happened.
This is I don't know. I heard an expression yesterday when somebody was reflecting on the expression we sometimes use in society of "don't be so sensitive,"
Yeah,
and I find there's like a really kind of ironic twist to that,
yeah, good.
because it's in this sensitivity that we get to notice just the sheer multitude of things that are occurring simultaneously, that are coming and going, even in our system, whether it's our thoughts or our feelings, or our interpretation of life. That if we were to be a little bit more sensitive to these things, it would be so much harder to take life so personally. That these things are occurring, and it's not, as you say, something to make sense of, package, distill an understanding or an action from. So much of this can just be a felt experience. And I loved what you said earlier, almost in the sense of creating like quietness, for you to experience this. And it's almost in the quietness that the ideologies, or that the thought process, it just gives it space to dissolve a little bit.
Yeah. And your first point about the sensitivity, people talking about shouldn't be so sensitive. Oh, by the way, but what you've said is very. I'm not saying a lot to it because it's
Yeah,
exactly. I totally agree. I find it you're describing how we function, and so we all, if we describe how we function, the great thing about that, we're keeping it pure and simple, and boil or always bring it back to the function of ourselves as a body. Then we can all relate to that. We can all find the felt experience of that in our own system to relate to. And so we all find a common ground when we return to the fact that we are a living, breathing, intelligent, thinking body or being, and that we are all the same in that, and we're all affected by life in very much the same way. It's just that depending on what we do with our thinking, we can deflect that, or we can override that, ignore it, suppress it, deny it, whatever. But it's still there in the body. Yeah, the effect is there. So to me, that's sensitivity. When people say don't be so sensitive, I don't think they're really understanding. Real sensitivity is our capacity is something we have no control over. So you can't say don't be
yeah,
sensitive. This is something that is happening. Yeah, we are constantly affected by our environment because we are part of our environment as a living, breathing organism. So we are constantly affected by it. You're affected by me. I'm affected by you, and not just by what we say to each other, of course, but by looking at you. I'm affected by you. Yeah.
yeah,
So because I start to, my vibrations, my molecules start to adjust according to becoming my response to what I see when I look at you. Yeah. And so, and what I sense coming at me, I may not consciously understand that that's what I'm sensing, but whether I know it or not, I am. Whether I know
yeah,
it or not, I am, because I can't not. And so when people say you don't need to be so sensitive, I think no, sensitivity is impossible to avoid. You can avoid it mentally, which is all really just denial. But the oversensitivity that people have, I think you pretty much described it. Is that you're not personalizing, so it's more like a mental reaction of self defensiveness. Yeah,
yeah,
that I think people are talking about, where I've got an idea, and if you challenge my idea, or I'm a fragile person because I've been hurt, and you I'm insecure, and you are not sensitive to my insecurities. These are the things I become very, very upset with, or very disturbed in myself with, and therefore I become, once being disturbed, I become overly sensitive, but this is the sensitivity of thinking, not the sensitivity of the body. And
Yeah.
they're very, very different things. Yeah. And I think that's what you were sort of, does that
Yeah,
make sense
yeah,
to you?
yeah. No, no, that makes absolute sense. And I was also intrigued with, I was also intrigued with just the way you were when I asked the question initially. What question are you trying to answer as you move through life? And you
Yeah.
mentioned the idea that that answers were just presenting themselves. I really love this distinction between I'm asking a question versus just life. I almost get the sense that just life is happening for you, and there's a there's an there's no resistance to what is unfolding for you. Therefore, a question doesn't need to be formulated to interpret it, because whatever life is bringing you, that is what life is. And with this, I was just intrigued as to, from that point on, what the what's almost like the sensory experience of life from that perspective versus kind of questioning or seeking answers to questions.
Okay. The first point that I'd like to make really clear is because it's very important for people not to think that what I'm describing as the way I'm functioning as being something superhuman or something akin to this mythical enlightenment stuff. Yeah. Um, this is a natural function of all of us. Yeah, we all receive life as facts before we interpret them through our belief systems and ideologies. Yeah, or through our thinking. So I'm still going with your question that what is it like to be responsive, to have no resistance? Okay, I would say that it's not quite correct to say in that I won't always go without resistance. In fact, resistance and disturbance is very, very much a part of my life. Yeah, and a very important part of my life. Yeah,
Right.
it's not unnatural. It's not wrong, but it is not necessarily correct to act on that resistance. Yeah,
Yeah.
and therefore fight life. When I have resistance, why am I having resistance? To something in life, either because it's challenging something in myself that I don't like the effect, don't like the feeling of, or something in myself that I don't quite understand or I don't have real contact with. Yeah, and it's bringing something to life in me, and I get a little bit, and a resistance comes with that. Or I'm resistant to something because I should be, because something is coming at me to try and hurt me or harm me or manipulate me or influence me. Yeah, and so then I'll be a little bit resistant to this guy. He's a bit of a what's he trying to put on me here? Yeah, so that resistance is not necessarily conclusive, though. That resistance is a part of our natural intelligence. To me, I would say that's a part of an intelligence that is in a person when they have a real sense of themselves that isn't dependent on what everybody else thinks about them or other people have told them they are. Yeah. And this is a massive problem that people lose themselves in other people's thoughts about them, and
Right.
they actually get to a point where they think they're their thoughts. So that resistance is a good thing. It's a discriminatory thing. It's keeping clear on the realities of me not being tainted by the delusions or the opinions of others that they may put on me. Yeah, I'm not saying I wouldn't have something put on me, but the resistance will give me a chance to just weigh this up, feel my way through this. So that becomes a part of the sensory response. So it's not actually an obstacle in receiving life. It's just that you're able to receive life, whether it's a healthy aspect of life or an unhealthy aspect of life. You still receive them without, let's say, opinion to begin with. Yeah, without the immediate judgment and criticism and fear, there's more of a willingness to, okay, let's see if I let this in, what it's going to do. And the immediate thing, if it doesn't match with something of me, then that part of me will resist. Yeah, and that might be because it's a part of me that I'm denying and I don't want to know about, and you're putting me in touch with that. Or it might be, as I've said, it might be simply that a part of me is going, no, this is not healthy. And both of those are my natural bodily sensitivity, which I call my bodily intelligence, it guiding me at a sensory level. So if when I'm operating this way, I'm actually open to all of life because I've got ears and eyes and touch, and they're all functioning individually. Yeah? Like I can be listening to something over there and tasting something in here and looking at something there. And we have this amazing capacity for, if you like, I often say thought has, a very limited ability to intelligence for life. There's only one train of thought happening. Whereas the sense organs, I've got 5 sense organs functioning at least. And if they're all functioning at 100%, it's like I've got 500% receptivity to life all around me. And it's very heightened. So all of that is happening at the same time. Yeah. And all of that information is coming into this body at the same time. And it is filtering down into every cell of the body, because every cell of the body is dependent on this information to then respond to that information, so that we get this response comes through. If someone is affecting you, or you're receiving information of one nature, it will affect one area of your body. When you're receiving information of another nature, it'll affect a different area. For example, your stomach might respond to the smell of food, and so on. And so you get different responses, and these are very specific and very intelligent responses that each sense organ brings the information through. And the sensory facts of what we are as an alive creature, every single cell has its own intelligence, and can deal with a different facet of what's coming in. And there's a lot coming in. Yeah. So your intelligence is very, very heightened, and your capacity, therefore, to receive all that information changes your ability to understand what the hell's going on. And so therefore life becomes a flat out source of information, rather than this resistance to life because you're thinking too much about it, because you've got ideas about it, which then turns into, but what about this and what about that, and all these questions of life, when really the answers are in life, or the only answers we have are in life, and any answers we make up are generally disconnected from the realities of life. Yeah. So you function in a much more, it is a much more fearless way. Yeah, you're not so defensive. And so you're not so overly sensitive, but you're super sensitive in the sense that you're allowing that in. And I would say this is really our intelligence, the foundation of our intelligence.
There's so over the last maybe 10 years or so, I came to things like meditation or journaling, or exploring a lot of different modalities. And there's something in it where I've just had this growing suspicion over the last few years that you mentioned earlier, the sense of almost getting lost in the method.
Yeah.
I have this growing feeling that there's something so much more natural to this process of life in our own perception of human development. And I'm just curious, from your point of view, you're saying that initially, look, you were meditating 10, 12 hours a day. It wasn't for lack of doing the thing, or trying enough, or living without enough distractions, whatever it may be. But what you're pointing to seems to be, you're putting words to a feeling or a suspicion I have, if you get me, in just terms of what is that, without codifying this or without saying what one must do for this. Like, what is this kind of, how does one kind of fall more into this noticing almost, like, or just this engagement with life, rather than it being a, we must do X and then life will be Y kind of approach to, let's say, self-improvement or development or whatever word someone wants to use?
Wow, what a question. Okay. I probably should unpack it pretty thoroughly. Is that okay?
Yeah,
It's a
take your time. Yeah.
You've opened up a big tin of worms. Yeah. So religion and spirituality has this notion that we come into this life from somewhere else in order to go through a learning curve and a personal development, hopefully to achieve a higher state than what we started at, and then to go on and live in other planes of existence, let's say. Yeah, that's really rounding it off. Yeah. This is incredibly problematic because whilst we are of the opinion that we are lacking already, whatever we do to resolve that lacking is based in the belief that we are lacking. So it is impossible. It won't work. There is no way to achieve what you're trying to achieve, whilst the fundamental reason you're trying to achieve it is because your deep down belief is, I am lacking and I must be more. Now, this is not just religion and spirituality. This spreads out into business. This spreads out into the corporate world. This spreads out into all of society. That we, as we are somehow incomplete and somehow lacking. Yeah. And this idea began with spirituality and religion, as far as I can see in history. And it is a crippling idea, absolutely cripples what we are. I would say it is the most harmful idea ever invented, because there is no way out of it. There is no way out of it. Once that idea is in there that you are somehow, as you are, insufficient, whatever you do is whatever you do to become more sufficient is at the same time agreeing with your insufficiency. So you are in a loop, and this is what religion and spirituality is either intentionally or unintentionally designed to do, to cripple an amazing creature, to absolutely cripple what a person really is. Now, that's a pretty strong statement, but I'll continue. So the spiritualist and the religious ideologies is saying that, one, they're saying we are something that comes from somewhere else into this body, yeah, and we come here to learn something about ourselves. So we are incomplete. We want to become complete. There is this has not been anything tangible. This is not a tangible discovery. This is just an ideology, yeah, an invention. The tangible discovery that we all share in, but we've overlooked because of this invention, because of this way of thinking. And this way of thinking was given to us then by our parents, who at a very early age have encouraged us to get high grades, to be a prettier person, to be this, to be that, but not really giving us a chance to find out what it is to be ourselves. Yeah. So to find out what it is to be ourselves, we're looking at a very different thing. So if there's nothing about me that's come from another plane. Yeah. It's very, very clear to me that I came out of my mother's womb. This is not a highly complicated concept to grasp. Yeah. I came out of my mother's womb, which there's a lot in that. Yeah. Because what has formed me, what has brought about the existence that I can tangibly know myself as, is a continuation of the natural world. So if I've come about out of the natural world, like an orange comes out of an orange tree, I have come out of the planet. I have come out of this world as a natural expression of this world. Then I'm also found that I have something unique that has never come into the world before. Yeah, I have come into the world as an expression of the world expressing itself in the unique form of me. Yeah. Me not being I and all that nonsense, the unique form of what you see sitting over here. Yeah. That what you see sitting in front of you, this unique living organism, which we give very little credit to thanks to spirituality and religion over thousands of years. And therefore, we have very, very poor understanding of it. Very poor understanding. And we look outside of ourselves to understand ourselves before we've ever really understood what the hell is going on in here. And I don't mean it's scientifically understood. This is not an understanding of ourselves. I mean, how do we understand ourselves? How do we know ourselves? You said it before. We feel ourselves in the feeling of ourselves. Yeah. I can feel I exist. I can feel my own existence as a sensory creature. Therefore, I know I exist. It's the only way I can know whether I exist or not. It's not an intellectual concept. It's just an immediate, simple fact. Yeah, it may sound incredibly simplistic, but it goes to great depths. Yeah, it goes to great depths because it answers I shouldn't say answers. It provides the only answers that are available in a truly tangible way, and that is, I know I exist because I can feel my own existence. Yeah, if I take the sensation, if I numb out this hand, I can think about its existence, but that is not the same as knowing the existence of the hand because I actually feel myself in the hand. If you just experiment with that for yourself for a moment, it's a very different knowing I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about an intellectual knowing. Yeah, I'm talking or thought-based knowing. I'm talking about an organic knowing. That is the hand knowing its own existence, the face knowing its own existence, the brain knowing its own existence. And all together, we all know our own existence. We meaning everything that makes up me. Everything here knows its own existence because it's a tangible fact. Yeah. And that fact is acceptable to me, and therefore I'm okay with it. Yeah. And it is more than acceptable because coming into the world, not coming into the world from somewhere else, but coming into expression, coming out of this world, I'm still part of this world, aren't I? I'm still very much a part of this natural world. And this is the only world that I know of. And being a part of this natural world, I'm not born incomplete and needing to improve on myself. There's nothing to improve on. Ideas and ideologies can suggest that there's things to improve on. We can come up with the idea of what is wrong and what is right, what is good and what is bad. No animal agrees with any of that shit. Yeah. Okay. And fundamentally, I'm an animal. I am an animal. So how do I determine what is right or wrong? As an animal, we were talking about this earlier, I'm absolutely dependent on my sensitivity and my interconnectedness, which is natural to the animal, my being affected by you. Yeah. But the fact that if something happens to you, I'm affected determines my actions with you. Yeah. If I'm disconnected from you and something happens to you and I don't feel any effect from that, I don't care. I really don't care. Yeah. But when I feel effect from that, I do care because that's what enables me to care, is that I am affected. Yeah. That makes sense. So we can relate to that. Yeah. So I am affected. So in that sense, when I see that I'm part of this natural world, that I'm born complete and I'm just here to express myself as I am, then the only problem is the ideas that are introduced to that living organism at a certain point, when basically at the point we are taught to speak and think. Yeah. So why are we taught to speak and think? Because we're not born doing that. But we are born with the natural sensory intelligence of feeling. Feeling in the body. I don't mean emotion here. I mean actual physical, tangible feeling. Yeah. So there's that feeling of me. There's a feeling of the presence of me. And how do I know me beyond you knowing me? And how do you know you beyond me knowing you? Is because you can feel you. And only you know what it feels like to be you. Only you. Yeah, in that really immediate, and that's a powerful thing, because if I can feel me, I also know in that feeling how hot I am, how cold I am, how hungry I am, how distressed I am, how relieved I am, how relaxed I am. I know all about me. That's intelligence, and that's the intelligence I need to be able to live and survive in this world. Yeah, and that goes far beyond that. Yeah, not far beyond. It becomes far more significant. You recognize the significance of that.
It matters much more than a lot of the other ideas that we fill our heads with.
It matters a lot more. So there you have. If I'm not a being that's come into this body from another world to somehow improve on myself because there's something lacking in me, but I am a expression of this world that's come into this world, out of this world. That's something that I have a tangible recognition of, ability to recognize. Yeah. And how I am is how I am. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But once I've learned to think, once I'm taught to think, the trouble is learning to think is fine, because thinking as a mechanical function is incredibly effective. But when we try to use thinking to understand ourselves, we can't. It's not what it's for. Yeah. It's simple as this. You know what it feels like to be sad. I know what it feels like to be sad. Does the word sadness in any way give us an understanding of what it feels like to be sad? The word doesn't give us anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. The word is a dead thing. Thought does not contain understanding or intelligence. It just describes what the body knows as a felt sense in itself. Yeah. Does that make sense? So I can say I'm hot.
Oh, yeah. And the words themselves are very blunt instruments for trying to capture the subtlety or the nuance or the sensitivity of the experience.
Very blunt, because the sensitivity of the experience is only in the experience, isn't it? Yeah. It's once you think about something, you start to lose contact with the felt sense of it, if that makes sense. If you're in a hot bath of water and you're sitting there feeling, oh, this water feels so cool, or so warm, so hot, and you start daydreaming, you start thinking, you can get to a point where you don't even realize that you're in the water. So thinking has a predominant problem. It brings about our separation, our disconnection from sensitivity. Once we're disconnected from that sensitivity, we have no way to know, no real guide as to how to treat one another. Yeah, so we don't. So then we try and fix that by creating rules and morals and religious concepts, and being compassionate and being that's all ideologies. If I have to practice compassion, it shows that I'm completely disassociated person. I am a traumatized, disconnected human being if I have to practice compassion. I'm not there. Yeah, I'm caught up in a mental construct of myself, basically.
But there's something you said earlier which I really love, which is we become so aware of the interconnected or interrelated subtleties of our experience with each other, that you don't have to think about being compassionate based on if your sensitivities are open to the interaction, you will typically respond in a way that exudes the label of compassion that we're looking to capture with it.
Yeah. And that's the real thing. Compassion is an artificial religious attempt at what they'll never be able to do. Yeah, because it's not something you do. It's either happening naturally or it's not happening at all, if that makes sense. It's either happening or it's not happening. If you're disconnected from yourself as a living creature, as an organism, then in the thought construct of yourself, no matter how much in that thought construct you're having high and elevated thoughts, they are still superficial and disconnected and unfeeling. They can never make up for feeling.
I don't know, it's becoming more apparent to me that we're creating by interpreting more of our life through thoughts and almost analyzing ourselves to death.
Yeah.
And I mean that in terms of a sensitivity of feeling, that we've almost created a synthetic reality of what's happening. Like there's, like you, as you said, the thought creates a separation between the phenomenological experience of life versus our ideas of life, which also then opens up, as you pointed to, the ideas of other people on our life.
Yeah.
And there's something really beautiful in what you're saying, in the sense of, the word authenticity has been just hijacked, and it's meant in how can you become more authentic, or how can you be more yourself? And there is usually a link to that between some sort of destination to get to, or space of growth to occur before you can become your authentic self.
Yeah.
But it's, as you're pointing out to, it's all the things that we're putting in the way of our natural experience.
This reminds me, what you're saying there, becoming yourself, it's becoming your authentic self. It's a little bit like there's people talking about they're saying you have to make an effort to be in the moment. Yeah, it's like, well, where else can you be? This is just another philosophical concept that creates a question when there's already an answer. The question is, how can I be in the moment? Well, the answer is there is no other place to be. So you are always in the moment. There is only ever the moment. There's nowhere else. There is no past. There is no future. There's nowhere else to be. Even if your thoughts are about the past, you're thinking those thoughts now. Yeah. So you are always, every part of you that is in existence right now, every function of you only exists now. Nowhere else. Even your traumas from the past are hurting you now. They're existing now. They're part of your life experience now. So when you said about being a more authentic person, this is a similar problem that religion has given us, that philosophies, that spirituality has given us. And what it's given us is the idea that we are not that. Yeah. That we are not that as we are. Now, I've got to unpack this a little bit. What is it that we are not? Yeah. We are not living up to the ideal man, the ideal woman. Yeah. We're not living up to the thought-induced state of enlightenment. And that's all it is. It's just a thought-induced state. Yep. If you think about being compassionate, you think about being nice, you think about being kind, you have your meditations to imagine yourself into a state that equals the theory of enlightenment, you'll create the thought-induced state of enlightenment, and you are more delusional than the person who has never thought of enlightenment. That's a pretty full-on statement, but I'm going to stick to it. Yeah, it's thought-induced. It's nothing real about it at all. There's no such thing as enlightenment. It's total bullshit. But we can't see that when we're in it. Yeah. We can't see that when we're doing that, because it becomes a self-intoxication. I know exactly what it was like. I was the most intoxicated, blissful monk. I really was. And I was just completely self-intoxicated. And it's not very difficult to get self-intoxication. Self-intoxication is a sort of like a self-consciousness that is made up of thoughts about yourself that tell you you're just doing fine, yeah, that you're wonderful or something. This is not a balanced human being. A balanced human being is a natural human being, and a natural human being is everything that makes us up. What we see as the negative, what we see as the positive, our pain and our pleasures. Yeah, and our pain and our pleasures are very important to us. It's particularly, even more so, our pain today. And the reason I say that is because to the pain part of us is the part that's been avoided, the part that we've ignored as much as possible. We're always trying to get over the pain, get rid of the pain. Yeah. And so that which you avoid about yourself is the part of yourself that you have the least intimacy with. So therefore, the poorest understanding of. So if people want to really be enlightened as to the true nature of themselves, go to your pain. Stop avoiding your discomforts. Forget about all that bliss bullshit. Anybody can bliss themselves out. That's just a thought-based intoxication. Go to the real stuff. Go to the stuff that you're avoiding. Because in there, you're going to discover the parts of you that you don't know anything about because you've chosen not to. Yeah? You've chosen not to. You don't want to go near it. So, but we are, in the natural state, we are all those things. In the natural state, as we are naturally. I mean, this is how we are, not how we should become. There's nothing to become. The reason I say there's nothing to become, because what we are going to become exists in the future, and the future doesn't exist. So anything that makes up that future doesn't exist either. So there's nothing that you can work towards becoming. You're stuck with what you are. That's not such a big problem, though. It's the problem we have with being stuck with what we are. The problem is our bias towards the facts of life, our bias towards what we are. And our bias is made up of our preferences, of our unresolved experiences, obviously, the hurt we've had and so on. And we have to resolve that hurt, sure. And this is very important, but we're not going to resolve that pain. We're not going to resolve that hurt if we avoid it. Yeah, we're going to resolve that pain. And this is a big area of this has been a massive thing in my life. I've come to understand, not that I've been in a lot of pain, a lot less than a lot of people, but I've been completely involved in helping people heal their pain and change their relationship with pain to understanding it in a much more advantageous way. Is that it's the aspects of yourself that you need to give attention to, or you need to not avoid, actually. So even that statement, when I said you need to give attention to, is not quite correct. The problem is, why do you need to give it attention? Because you've already avoided it. Yeah. So this is what we're saying, trying to become something better or trying to be yourself. Well, actually, you already are yourself. Anything you do to try and be yourself is moving away from yourself into more of the idea that you're not yourself. You see this dilemma of absolutely. Enlightenment. The more I'm trying to be enlightened, the more I'm keeping this whole delusion going that I'm not enlightened. I have to somehow become something different to what I am to be what I am.
It's like putting it's putting a fixed track over like a kind, not even wild, but like an undulating, pulsing existence of life. Like the moment we put fixed rails on top of something and say we have to get to there, we're almost removing the aliveness or the life from our life.
Yeah.
While trying to say to ourselves, this will make me feel more myself, which is as you say, it's a really curious dilemma that we're imposing upon ourselves.
It's a dilemma. It's a human dilemma. Trying to be something that you are not is not going to make you something. It's not going to make you what you are. Yeah. If you are not that now, then stop trying to be that. And what you've got left is what you are.
Could you, Matthew, give just a sense of when you're, as you kind of alluding to, just helping people either explore their pain or to go towards it, what are some of the kind of I don't even say techniques, I don't even know what word to use given the conversation, but how might that process or that experience unfold?
I use the word pain in a very broad context here. Any sort of mental or physical sensation that is causing you discomfort or distress. Yeah. So you can have the simplicity of a painful back, or you can simply have the complex, or you can have the complexity of what you think about that painful back and all the things you do to try and get rid of it. Yeah, so that itself becomes a secondary form of pain, and that is the reaction to the painful back. Makes sense? So our mental reaction to our actual condition is that reaction is why we suffer. Your mental reaction, how you react to yourself, causes your experience of yourself to become something very different to what it really is. So what it really is not known to the person who's in reaction to their pain. So anybody listening now, your pain may not be known to you in a conducive or acceptable way, but it may be known to you as something overwhelming and completely unacceptable and insurmountable. Yeah. The primary reason for this is because you're not actually experiencing your pain where and as it is. And where it is in your body. And as it is exactly how it is as a sensation in your body when you are no longer thinking about it, but when you are purely feeling it. So if you're purely feeling it, you drop beneath your thoughts about your pain into purely the sensation of the disturbance that's in your body, the pain that's in your body, the disturbance, the upset, the grief, whatever it may be. If you can actually feel that as it is before we've added our thoughts to it, the reason this prevents the suffering of it is because the suffering of it is when we exaggerate that sensation beyond our ability as a living organism to cope with that. Our ability to cope with pain as a living organism is quite immense, actually. It's quite immense. But our fear, our mental reaction to that makes it instantly impossible. Instantly impossible. So there's the pains and the sufferings of, maybe you've lost a friend, they've died. Yeah. And so there's a pain and a suffering there, a grieving that you're feeling. Are you feeling grief, or are you creating a story mentally about how you can't accept and don't want to accept the fact that person's no longer in your life? So this is something I mentioned about before. Do I have questions about life? Not really, because one of the answers in our life when someone dies is, I have lost somebody. Yeah, that's the first answer. I've lost someone. They're gone. That's my answer. And I don't want that answer. Because what is it I don't want? I don't like how it feels when they've suddenly gone. So that is grief. The feeling of loss is grief. Not what we do with that afterwards, which is we think about, maybe they've gone to heaven. Or, oh no, they're going to reincarnate. Yeah. All these ideas are doing is preventing the healing process. You see, people have been taught to be so frightened of endings in life. But the healing process of grief is, don't get into those intellectual concepts of escapism that the spiritualists and the religious people have thrown at us. And we've grabbed them because, we don't want to think we die. We don't want death. But we have death. Yeah, but we don't want it. We don't want it. Yes, but you have it. Oh, well, we'll just tell you there's no such thing as death, and you just continue on into another life. Oh, that's great. I love Buddhism. I love Christianity, whatever it is. I love this now because it gives me an answer to my problem. Really? Really? Now, how are you going to go about healing the loss if you don't believe you've lost them anymore? So now you don't believe you've really lost them at all. They're still there. Yeah. So you're just avoiding the immediate experience of loss. And that's all you know as a body, as a living organism. You know it because you feel it, man. You feel it. When someone dies, you feel a loss. Yeah. And if you feel that loss, and you don't use all of those stories to distract you from the truth, into some fantasy that makes you feel better and causes you to disassociate from how you truly feel, regardless of whether the fantasy is true or false, it's the way we're using it that is harmful. So we're using that fantasy to avoid our loss. I'm not interested in those fantasies, by the way. They're of no relevance to me existing today. Not at all.
You're confronting my fantasies, but I'm enjoying the confrontation.
I know you do. That's okay, because these.
I know.
I know.
I'm enjoying where you're going with this. Please.
Because you've presented to me that you've been really questioning this. What am I doing? Trying to be something I'm not. You're hurting yourself, man. You're causing pain to yourself. That's what you're doing. But if you get grief, we'll continue to go, we'll unpack this because it's not just you, it's the majority of our species are doing this because they've been taught to. They've been taught to avoid pain. They've been taught that it's suffering, it's bad. It's not suffering. Your pain does not have to be suffered if you understand you can feel it, if you know how to feel. But people don't know how to feel without mentally reacting to those feelings, without mentally describing those feelings. So psychology and psychiatry has a lot to pay for. They've done a lot of wrong to society because they've given a word to every tiny little sensation we have, and constantly inventing new illnesses that are just figments of their own imagination. Because really there is only one thing, and I'm simplifying something here. There is just the physical sensations in the body, and there's various degrees of that. We can label it as peace or harmony or anger or love or compassion or this. You can label it as distress, or you can just feel it as it is and don't put a label on it at all. This is a huge statement. Or you can feel it as it already is in your body, as a physical sensation in your body, and don't think about it. Don't label it mentally. You'll still feel pain. You'll still feel distress. But when you're feeling it that way, automatically you are allowing it to process and heal. If I feel the grief, it will dissipate because that's what the body does. The body takes care of itself. It knows how to relieve itself of stress. And that's not by screaming out or smashing someone else. It's not that at all. I just have to feel it. If I can truly feel a sensation as it is, it will dissipate. It will absolutely dissipate. Even if you're horny and you haven't got a partner, if you just feel that, it'll dissipate. Don't worry, it'll dissipate. But if you keep thinking about it, you're going to prolong that feeling to a point where it's painful. Even a pleasurable feeling will become painful. So because of our thought reactions to our pain, we prolong pain, we exaggerate it, beyond what it actually is, and then we prolong that pain for as long as we're thinking about it, which is beyond its otherwise natural duration, which would happen in the body. So the answer's there. When we feel our pain, we're also feeling the effects of life. So you're not in pain or distress because you're a lesser human being. The natural state of you or any other person is a lot to do with the result of what you've been through in your life. Now, if I'd been through what you've been through in your life, I would be feeling very similar because we are functioning pretty much the same way. If I had been through what a lot of my, colleagues, clients have been through in their life, I would not be the same as I am today. Does that mean that them going through massive traumas and pain and ending up that person at the end of it, that they are somehow wrong or somehow lesser? Not to me. To me, when I look at that, I'm looking at the living organism has been collecting this pain along the way. Some people have tremendously abusive, many people have tremendously abusive lives beyond what any sane comprehension can make of it. Yeah. Now, how the hell does the body cope with that? It copes. It contains that, but we have to be able to heal that. However you are right now, let's say it's the result of everything you've been through up till now. So that means somehow this living organism of you has magically become the total expression of everything you've been through, the perfect expression, the perfect accumulation and expression of everything you've been through up to that point. That is amazing, actually. That what you've been through makes you different. What I've been through makes me different. And our differences may be massive in the sense of how much we suffer or what we've been through. But you cannot say that that makes you a lesser person or it makes you a greater person because you happen to have a life where you weren't treated badly, so you didn't end up with these tendencies that people would think is evil. Yeah. The only problem is what you do with it. Once you realize that's a condition, that's what are you going to do about that? Yeah. We can't do anything about that. We shouldn't do anything about that. We have to understand that it's perfectly right that we are that way. Yeah. I'm not going to change myself now that I've discovered I'm a friggin' mess. Yeah. I have to understand how to embrace that. I don't have to like that to embrace it. Of course, I don't like it. That's part of being what I am. I don't like what I am because look at the crap that's made me what I am. Of course, I don't like being what I am, but I am what I am. There's the fact of life. There's the information about me. No questions there. This is the way I am. I know that because I feel it. Yeah. And then some religious or spiritualist person comes along and says, I just use this meditation and become like that and leave that behind. What for? What do you want to do that for? What's wrong with that? It's a judgment of that, of what you are. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course you're like that. Look at what you've been through. This is your natural state, even though unnatural things have brought this about. This is the natural response of the body to being dealt with or treated in different ways. So you are the result of many natural responses. I'm the result of many natural responses. How on earth do we come up with this idea that you are somehow a greater being than me? How can it's not relevant. It makes absolutely no sense at all. I've been through what I've been through. You've been through what you've been through. People suffer in this world. They just don't know how to deal with that suffering. And that's what I've been busy helping people do, is to change their relationship with their pain. And a big part of that is to negate the belief systems of ideologies and spiritualities and religious thinking that says that we are somehow needing to be better than what we are. And there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong with us. Look at, how can you be wrong when you look at exactly what you've been through and you go, yeah, I know what I've been through because look at the way I am now. How can that be wrong? And how can it be called lesser? It just is illogical. It just makes no sense at all. Yeah. If a person's been beaten through their life, violently beaten, then they're going to have strange reactions when people go like this. They're going to be frightened of that. And there's going to be memory of that all through their body in every spot they've been beaten on. Yeah. How do they resolve that? That's all they want to do. All they need to do is heal that pain. So you have to feel it exactly as it is, where it is in your body. Not analyze it. And this goes for mental health or physical health. Yeah. Mental health and mental illness to me is very simple, very complex. It's very complex. Yeah. But ultimately what it is a reaction to the facts of life and a reaction to the facts of how you feel. That's not belittling it. It's not bringing it down to nothing. That reaction is in that reaction, I am disconnected from the facts of me. And I want to be. I don't want any bar of those facts. I can't cope with those facts. So all I'm going to do is get lost in my thinking of complaining and bitching about myself and create other problems, create a disorientated, disconnected, disassociated mental state. Yeah. Fair enough. Of course you have, because you're in so much pain. Because the facts are you're in so much pain and you don't know how to deal with that. So you react to it. Yeah. And that mental reaction is the mental illness. And this, of course, affects our, I'm simplifying it, but it's still bringing it back to something that is understandable. So what do you do with mental illness? What do you do with a mental reaction? What is a mental reaction? It is your interpretation and your complaint about anything you don't like that exists. Yeah. But it exists. So how is that the answer? How is what exists the answer? And how is the reaction the problem? Yeah. The reaction is the problem because it keeps you away from the answer. And the answer is not bliss. Yeah. The answer is pain. But how to feel that pain is feeling that pain or any disturbance you have on a day-by-day level. That's why I was very, very quickly to say to you when you talked about my sensory receptivity to life, and you said without resistance. Oh no, resistance is there.
Yeah.
Resistance is there. So pain, there's resistance to pain. So when I try to feel my pain, I just freak out. I just feel the resistance to it. That's okay. Be with that as well. Whatever is happening in your current condition, whatever is happening, not what you're adding, but whatever is happening, yeah, is perfectly fine. And then if you habitually add that to your condition, yeah, because it's just overwhelming you, that's okay too. Just know you're reacting and come back to the reaction in your body. It's most important that you always have to come back to where you start to feel the physical reality of your body and the physical reality of the condition as it is in your body. It always will be there. Yeah, that's the anchor. If you try and deal, sorry, go on.
It's almost then like the synthetic part. Then almost to it is the resistance to the resistance. Insofar as the mental construct around what we're interpreting, like the perception or of what is actually happening is the thing that will elongate or keep us stuck in loops. Whereas if we're just open to the feeling, and even if that feeling is resistance, if we're even open to that, that's when we have a chance for these things to be felt, like not even to be solved, not even to be extricated or disassociated, just literally to be felt. And I guess, as you said earlier, what is this life or what is this existence other than, what can we say it is other than the feeling of this existence? Like, so to me, what you're saying, and as I say, with some of the things you're saying about like whatever, because I have curiosities about whatever the hell happens before or after here. If that's a fantasy or not, I have curiosities about it. But I think even that's interesting from the point of view of whatever are some of the things that we hold our interpretation of life in. If they don't get in the way of perhaps the phenomenological experience of life, then this other stuff can just be whatever, if someone can hold it closely, they can hold it dearly. It can be imagination, it can be fantasy, it can be reality, whatever. It doesn't matter, because if the crux of what you're saying is, if whatever you believe or don't believe, if it's taking you away from the felt experience of life, that's where our source of trouble is.
Oh, wow. You've done a very good job with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
The thing is, it doesn't matter what your belief system is, what your religion is, there's something common. I'm not talking about all that really. What I'm talking about is, what are we? Yeah. What is the common denominator? We are living organisms. Before anything else, we can't argue with that. Right now, we are living organisms. What you may be in the future, you can dream about that as much as you want. It's not going to make any difference. Yeah. It's not going to. But if you use it to interfere with the lived experience of this organism, you will do yourself harm. Yeah.
Look, Matthew, just looking at the time at the moment, and I'd love to talk to you again at some point, but just to think about what you've been saying in this conversation, whether it's from the initial idea or in your mid-20s of not asking a question anymore, because life was just, when you could feel life was just providing you with facts and information and answers perpetually almost. It's whether you're willing to engage or accept those answers, or whether you want to push them away. Like, from the idea of, we're exacerbating our own pain and suffering in life by virtue of the fact that we're not willing to feel what we need to feel. And I love this idea as well of what you touched on with the idea of grief and losing somebody. And you've really been capturing something that I think I really have an orientation towards it, just even in where I feel like, not even getting somewhere or going somewhere, but just an acceptance of, like, something is dissolving, because there's something very natural about what you're pointing to. And I think it's almost like the very fundamental part of this. Like, if my answers to life involve anything other than me absolutely experiencing what is, then I'm going to get very lost. And even as you put at the start, like, the idea that I could get lost in my techniques, which I think is a really lovely idea, because I think a lot of people, maybe even if they attribute a certain virtuosity to something, how can that possibly be a detriment to your experience of life? But I think when you closely examine these things, there's a lot to explore in that as well. Just as I have a habit of asking at the end of these conversations, Matthew, and I'm really intrigued to hear your answer to it, is, what is a good life for you, Matthew?
I've got a lot of good life to relate to be honest. So, and the only time that life has ever been good for me is when I've been completely myself and completely true to myself. At any time I have not been completely true to myself and operated completely as myself, my life has not been good. No way. And this is part of the reason I did create this meditation app, the Undo app, was because the main suffering I see begins with the disassociation from ourselves and the idea that we need to be something better or more. So you can never experience the goodness of life, the fullness of life, the contentment of life, the pain of life as the fulfillment as well. Yeah, as a fulfillment in its own right, because it's what you need in that moment. The pain of life that I feel is also fulfilling, because that's the only way to resolve my pain. And that's also not necessary for me to try and resolve it. It's just the fulfillment of knowing me deeply, is knowing the parts of me that have been hurt, that need to be integrated. Yeah. And the only way to integrate those is to stop thinking about these things and to get in touch and to come back to the feeling of me in the body. And it has to be in the body, because you can't feel anywhere else. Yeah. So when a person, for me, this is a good life, and therefore to share that further outside of me, when people, I did create this app so that I could expose very step by step, very methodically, and take people through a process which they would not actually even necessarily realize was happening at the time, but it was a process of exposing all the fallacies of their beliefs about themselves and what that's doing to them. And that exposure wakes people up from the harm of beliefs and ideas about myself. And therefore to the influences that come from other people. So a big thing there is to help people understand, like I said, what was the time in my life that's a good life is when I'm just myself. That means I don't establish myself or an idea of myself based on other people's view of me. I'm not interested in anybody else's view of me, to be honest, in the sense of to establish myself, because they don't know me. I only know me. You only know you. How do we know ourselves? Is because we can feel the sense of ourselves. What we think about ourselves is other people's thoughts, mostly. And so listening to what other people have to say about you, what you should be, how you could improve, if someone is saying that, I don't trust them straight away. I've been in the healing profession for 45 years, yeah, and I've been really busy and very successful. All I've ever done is help activate the natural healing process of the living organism to heal anything. Yeah. I do not heal anyone. I can't fix anyone. I can't help anyone. Primarily because they don't need fixing. They don't need help. They need to understand that the way they are is exactly as they need to be for now, right now. Yeah. And from that point on, stop avoiding it, stop denying it. And the app is the way I've put something out there for the world to take them through a process to literally teach people what they're doing wrong, or help them see for themselves actually what they're doing wrong, how they're harming themselves, and how they can learn. It's teaching them to respond to themselves sensitively and become accepting of themselves as they are, and to negate all the ideas that we need to improve and to be something other than what we are. And the more that happens, the better life is. Yeah. So the good life for me has been, I've never really, apart from when I got fooled as a monk, I got tricked into belief system. But I woke up to myself then. I realized there's nobody out there has got any answer for me. And not being arrogant in that, but it's because I don't need an answer. The answer is in the facts of life. The answers are in the facts. The answers are in the facts of how it feels to be me. I just have to understand that this is part of life, that I don't have to be something better or something different to the way I am. This is part of my living. And then life, even the pain of life, yeah, is a good life. It's a full life.
Yeah.
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 So I think that's probably it.
Yeah, Matthew, that's I really love that answer, and I really love the sentiment of like nobody knows you like you know you, and there's so much. I think that's a very like I'm not trying to say an empowering thought in the sense of trying to convince somebody of that, but it's just in the facts of life. If I only know me, well, then it's my experience of feeling me that I can feel more of life, that I can feel more of myself, that I am more myself as well. Matthew, please.
Sorry, there was just one thing, just because that can become confusing for people, because people think knowing is the domain of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't know ourselves through thinking. What we think about ourselves is an interpretation of ourselves, and that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing we're talking about, I know you get this, but we've got many people. The knowing is much more simple than that. When I'm cold, how do I know I'm cold? When I'm sad, how do I know I'm sad? What we then think we need to know is how to fix that. That knowing is thinking interfering. No, you don't need to fix that. You just need to know you are that way and know that there is nothing you can do to change that, because you're not supposed to be changing that. You're supposed to be feeling that as it is, and feeling the way you are activates any resolutionary process, any healing process that the body may need, that you may need. Yeah. And all of our memory, all of our traumas are held as feelings, sensations in our body. Yeah. And so not only will it help you on a day-to-day level, but on a much deeper level. when you apply this to meditation of the body, which is what is the natural meditation that I'm sharing with people. It's nothing like traditional meditation. It's the natural meditation that the body does all the time to not escape itself, to not resist itself, or even if I am in resistance to myself as a body, to incorporate that, just to feel the way I am. That gets rid of the problem of thinking when you're meditating, because you're not interested in your thinking. That's nothing to do with it. It's just how it feels in my body, in the sensations of my body, and that activates any healing process that hasn't been able to activate or hasn't been able to happen because you've been disassociated from the feeling of that. Make sense? So that to me is meditation.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very good distinction, or that's a very helpful distinction to make as well.
Just in case. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. Look, Matthew, thank you so much for your time. That was a truly enlivening conversation for me. And thank you so much for joining us on the What is a Good Life podcast today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it, Matthew.
Okay. Thank you very much. See you, Mark.